if you're not a soccer fan, but you're really trying to get into the worldwide game, I'm gonna give you the teams you need to follow early on. So if you really want to really get into it, I'm gonna give you the names of the teams and of the players you should really kind of get to know if you really want to kind of get into it. Because I mean, soccer is a really fun sport to get into. There's a reason why most of the world like chooses it as its number one sport. It's a whole environment. It's an atmosphere, and just like American sports, I feel like once you kind of really claim a team and really get into it and kind of watch your team grow. It's really the same as watching your hometown team win the Super Bowl. It's really wild. So how you guys doing? It is July 11th, 2020 here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims. And like I said, I'm just going to give you a rundown of teams you really got to get to know because, I don't know, like I said, after the 2018 World Cup, I really started getting into soccer. Once I got into college, and of course I picked Bayern Munich at random, and now I'm really into it. I realized that a lot of my friends, a lot of them being international, like they're really into it as well. And Atlanta United is really fun. It's a fun team to watch. So you can even get into MLS as well, because once you kind of see soccer for the sport that it is, you kind of get to see that it's not like, even though there's not a lot of scoring in it, it's really special when those few goals, when those few like scoring opportunities actually happen, and it's actually art in motion. I don't know. I don't want to get all like that for soccer, but before I get into it, I want to just make you aware, if you haven't heard my other ones, if you're aware of how the soccer league works, apparently, so every country has its own league. The MLS, for instance, is America's soccer league. They have a top soccer league. They have a tier system. On the top, they're the teams that we know really well. Then you have the second tier of teams that fall out of the first and that are above the third tier, if that makes any sense. Like that's their minor league. For instance, in the English league, the Premier League, they have an English football league underneath it, and the worst two teams from the Premier League fall to the English Football League, and the two best teams from the English Football League get promoted to the Premier League. And that's kind of how that works with almost every soccer league in every country, because of course, you know, they have football clubs that have been there for a bit, and it's a system that's really been in place for over 100 years. So with that, I think it's good to know that with soccer, there's no salary caps. So the teams that tend to dominate their leagues are usually the teams that have the most money, or they have the best ability to acquire top tier players, which is why you see the same 10, 11 teams competing for the Champions League and competing for the titles within their own countries. So that's kind of where it's different. And some fans abroad, they definitely don't like it, but if you're watching the Champions League, it's really fun to see like the best players in the world concentrated on about 10 to 15 teams. So with that, I'm kind of going to get into the best teams within the 5 leagues that you need to be aware of. So first, starting in the Premier League in England, there's 3 teams in London you need to be aware of. The first one is Tottenham. Of course, they're the Tottenham Hotspurs. The striker for England, Harry Kane, one of the best strikers in the world, is one of the lead playmakers for Tottenham. Tottenham is a very up and down team that's definitely a giant killer in the sense that they definitely make it far in Champions League because they're a really good team, but people tend to count them out around the quarterfinals or the semifinals because they don't see them in the same vein as Barcelona or Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. So they tend to really count them out, but they tend to win a lot of games and make a lot of deep runs. They're a very rich club. They're able to really kind of get anyone, but to me, they're more of a 1B organization because for a lot of young players that are really trying to get their start before they move on to other clubs, they tend to use teams like Tottenham as more of a stepping stone to get to really kind of get to that top tier. And because this is also a team that can compete for Champions Leagues, considering how they got wrecked by Bayern this year, I think it's fair to say that they are not Champions League contenders, or Premier League contenders in that matter, but they're definitely a premier organization that you should be aware of. And if they start winning the Premier League, it's not completely out of nowhere. It's because they're a very rich organization with no, that's very well run and does a really good job in developing their youth. Another team in London that y'all are aware of is Arsenal. Arsenal has a very rich history, especially a very recent history, where in the early 2000s they were one of the more dominant teams in Europe, and they are a very rich organization that was really well run back in the day. They were able to acquire the best players from all over when they had the right manager, and right now they're still kind of looking like that team. They're kind of looking, but they're really all over the place. Right now, I wouldn't say they're definitely a contender, but when they have the money, when everything's clicking, I would definitely keep Arsenal in mind. But as of right now, they're not really a threat to anybody. But Arsenal is definitely a team you should have on your radar, especially if you want to watch the Premier League, because they're going to be on the Premier League a lot because they have a really big fan base, especially because they are in London and they have a lot of good players that have come through there, like Thierry Henry. So that's why, no, it's always good to keep Arsenal on your radar because you never know who's going to come through there. And the third team in London you should be aware of is Chelsea. They're the Blues team. And if you do follow American soccer, are aware that Christian Pulisic does play for Chelsea. He transferred from Borussia Dortmund in Germany, and he's playing for Chelsea right now in London. Chelsea is yet another really rich organization, especially because they are in London. They have a big fan base. Their organization is well run, and even this summer they're able to acquire Timo Werner to replace Eden Hazard. They have Tammy Abraham, the young striker, really coming up. I think Chelsea is definitely a good young team to keep an eye on moving forward, especially once Liverpool is no longer dominating the Prem League. They're definitely a team to be reckoned with in the near future. Yeah, and if you plan on trying to know the big teams, especially in England, you should know Chelsea. It's a pretty big club, and they're definitely a team that when they have everything clicking together in terms of their financials, their manager situation, and their developing youth, they are a very formidable team that everyone should be aware of. And another team in the Premier League people should be aware of, but they should know, and you should know the two teams involved in the Manchester Derby. You have Manchester City and Manchester United. Manchester City is currently the team that is under suspension they're under Champions League suspension, which means they're not allowed to participate in the next two Champions Leagues tournaments because of some illegal recruiting violations. They already lost one of their young players, Leroy Sané, to Bayern Munich, and it's probably only a matter of time before some of their other players in their prime decide to leave Man City. But pretty much before that, Man City was well run, or within the last 5-6 years, they've been really well run. They got Pep Guardiola, who made it work at Bayern and at FC Barcelona. So they've won the last two Premier League titles. Liverpool won this one, but Man City won the last two pretty handily because, I don't know, the way they move the ball, it's pretty elite. But because of their suspension over the next 2 years, they're definitely not going to be a contender because a lot of their players are going to leave. But after that 2-year suspension is up, just keep an ear on Man City, because Man City can very well, with the money they have, they can very well build themselves back up into that Goliath, that juggernaut that England is very aware of. And then also in Manchester, you have Manchester United. I think it's the most valuable soccer club, if not Barcelona or Madrid. For a bit, it was the most valuable soccer club in the world, and now it looks like Man U is definitely making a resurgence because they were one of the most dominant teams in the mid-2000s when Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney were playing there, and it looks as though with Pogba and their new young core of Rashford, Martial, and they have Bruno Fernandes out of Portugal, and they look to be doing really well under their new manager. They're doing well this year. They're placing in the Champions League. It looks as though Man U is a couple more years out. They might be a team that's competing with Chelsea, especially if they choose to keep Paul Pogba. But Man U is definitely a city you need to get to know if you're going to try to know the Premier League, because when all English teams are at their best, Man U might be the most dominant, because Man U has that money and they have the name recognition, and I think most players, I don't know, I think because of its name, its recognition, its prestige, and the money that it has, Man U is definitely the biggest name amongst it all. They just need to put everything together, and then they're basically dominating the Premier League again and back into everyone's hearts, because that's who they are. They're basically the New York Yankees of the Premier League. And then last but not least, you have the team that's dominating right now. You have Liverpool, who they're the only team playing in Liverpool, shockingly. And as of right now, they have been dominating the Premier League. This is their first Premier League title, but they won the Champions League last year or a couple of years ago. But no, Liverpool is the world. Is up before Bayern really started dominating this year. Liverpool really had its hold on the rest of the world, considering they've been dominating the Premier League this season the way they did. They won with about 8 weeks left, and they still had Man City in their league. No, Man City is a team not to be messed with Mo Salah, Sadio Mane, Roberto Firmino on the front line. You have Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's really elite. Alisson, Virgil van Dijk, who's still a dominant beast along the back line, and he's kind of what keeps this Liverpool team together. I think Liverpool's going to fall apart fairly soon, but for right now, they're still the most dominant team in the Prem. And if you're really trying to get into English soccer, I suggest the team that's really dominating. And also LeBron has a stake in it. So if you ever see LeBron repping Liverpool, it's why he owns probably I think he owns 7%, a 7% stake in the team, which is still a lot of stake. Don't take my word for that. I might be completely wrong. No, but you should be aware of just the powerhouse that Liverpool is. And just like Man U, once they have the money and everything's rolling, Man U can get it together. And just like Man City, they have the manager that can help bring these players together and help bring a winning atmosphere to the program. So that's the Premier League. Now transition to the German League. The German League just finished, but I think you guys are well aware of the two teams. The first team you guys should be aware of is Borussia Dortmund. They're the Bumblebee team. They wear yellow and black stripes, like Bumblebee from the Transformers. No, but that program is very elite. A lot of big names, especially German soccer players, come through Dortmund. Robert Lewandowski came through. You even have players right now like Erling Haaland, who looks, even at 20 years old, looks like he might be the best young striker in soccer, maybe next to Kylian Mbappe, the best young attacking player in soccer. They have players to really keep your eye on. You have Jadon Sancho, who's also incredibly young but may leave. But Borussia Dortmund is a team kind of like Chelsea or Arsenal or Tottenham right now, where a lot of young players tend to go to Borussia Dortmund before they transition to bigger teams like, say, a Bayern, or go to the Premier League. Like Christian Pulisic played there, but then Borussia Dortmund wanted to move him, but Borussia Dortmund's kind of that program. But even within the last decade, they've competed and lost in the Champions League final, which means they're usually always a contender. And now that Erling Haaland is on their team, they're definitely, to me, I would definitely list them as a 1A contender, as long as he can score at will. As long as he can give you one or two good goals in a really good game, I think Borussia Dortmund is always a contender. And now that Haaland's going to be there, they're definitely going to give Bayern probably a run for their money with the Bundesliga title for a couple of years. And then on the other side, like I said, you have Bayern Munich, who right now with Leroy Sané look like they're going to be the most invincible soccer team For the next couple years, now that Sané has signed that 5-year contract, you have the strongest front four in all of soccer with with Robert Lewandowski as the striker, Leroy Sané and Serge Gnabry as the wings, and assist record meister Thomas Müller as the center attacking mid. Of course, they have the midfielders of Leon Goretzka and Joshua Kimmich. And then on the defensive backline, they have Alphonso Davies, the best young player in the world. They have Ben Pavard, the French goalmeister. You have Nicolas Soule coming off injury, and David Alaba, who are two of the best the center backers in the world. And then you have Manuel Neuer, one of the five, probably 10, probably five best goalies of all time in the goal. So, I mean, that's the team that they're looking at now, and they're built for the next generation to kind of take over once the old players are done. They're built to win a Champions League right now. They look like they're built to win a Champions League. They're definitely going to be contenders through at least 2025. That's how dominant they're looking. And even with Borussia Dortmund having Erling Haaland, even if he does become the best striker in the world, Robert Lewandowski is still the best striker in the world right now. And with Leroy Sané and Serge Gnabry and the fact that Bayern Munich can basically lure any top German player in the world to their team at any moment, it makes Bayern a very dangerous team and a team that you should definitely know about if you're going to follow the Champions League tournament. And even this year, it looks as though they're going to win the treble. And if you're unaware what the treble is, you have the team that wins their domestic, that wins their country's league, which is basically having the highest, the most amount of wins, the most amount of points based on like wins, draws, or losses. Whoever has the most overall points, because they all play the same schedule, because they all play a home and an away game against every team in the league. That's how that schedule works. So you have the team that wins the domestic title, which is who has the best record, who had the best season out of every team that year. You have the team that wins their country's tournament. Every country has their own separate tournament. You play one game and you just winner advance all the way to the final, and then you have then the third title that year would have to be the Champions League title. So, for instance, Bayern Munich won the Bundesliga championship. Then they won the Deutsche Fußball Pokal, which is the German soccer championship with all the teams in Germany playing. And then if they win the Champions League, that will be 3 in the same season. And Bayern Munich looks like one of the few teams in soccer that can still do that. Liverpool's out. Juventus might have a chance of doing it, but I mean, we still have to get there. I think Juventus got, but I digress. Those are the two teams in Germany you have to know about, Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. They're both rivals. They play Der Klassiker twice every year, and now that Erling Haaland is in Dortmund and Robert Lewandowski is still in Bayern, it's probably still going to be a very high-scoring, classic soccer game that if you're trying to get into soccer, that's a soccer game you should know about. Next, moving on to the Italian league, you have Juventus, which is where Cristiano Ronaldo is. Juventus is usually Italy's champions. Even though AC Milan and Inter Milan make runs every once in a while, Juventus is, as of right now, they're Italy's crown jewel. And with the team they have now, they have Cristiano Ronaldo, they have Paulo Dybala, they have the best young center back in the game. I think right now, as long as they have Cristiano Ronaldo, they're always going to be a top-tier contender. Because as long as they hold down the defensive line, Cristiano Ronaldo can get himself a goal or two. And they still have the attack to get themselves to score around Cristiano Ronaldo. So Juventus is always a threat as long as he's there. And even after he's there, they can build that team around Matthijs de Ligt, who's 21, 22, one of the best young center backs in the world. They can build him into Liverpool around Van Dijk, and they can really make Juventus into a crazy superpower. But Juventus is definitely a team to know. They're always making waves in the Champions League. And just like Bayern draws all of the top players in the Bundesliga, Juventus eventually at some point will have most of the Serie A's top players at one point in their careers. Juve is definitely they're that type of poacher team, but That's the business when you don't have a salary cap. They're a very rich organization that can kind of do whatever they want. And as of right now, they're the team that is dominating the Serie A because they're the team that can afford they were the team that could afford Cristiano Ronaldo at this time. And as long as he's there, just like I said, they can always win the Champions League. Also within Italy, you should know the Milan teams. There's AC Milan, who dominated a bit, and Inter Milan, who they have Romelu Lukaku right now. Both teams right now aren't really competing for titles, but it looks as though both of those teams are really building up, and they could. No, they most definitely could. They're definitely like Tottenham and Arsenal and Chelsea, where if the money's going right and they hire the right manager, both those teams could definitely be Champions League contenders someday, because they have the money, they have the means to do so, and they have the name recognition and fame. So just be aware of those teams. And now moving on to the French league, you should just really be aware of PSG. PSG is Paris Saint-Germain. And right now, as long as Kylian Mbappe and Neymar are both in the attack, along with Mauro Icardi and Angel Di Maria, that attack itself will always make PSG a contender. And right now, they're still in the Champions League. I forget who they're facing, but PSG is definitely a title contender you should be aware of. It looks as though Mbappe may leave in the summer, and if he leaves, they might not be that much of a contender. They might not be that much of a contender, but they'll still dominate the French league. But as long as Kylian Mbappe is still the number 7 on that roster, people should definitely be aware of PSG. Kylian Mbappe is looking like he's going to be one of the world's best young players. So this is definitely a team I advise you to watch, because I mean it's kind of too late to really see Ronaldo and Messi hit the numbers that they did when they were at their peaks, but Kylian Mbappe is one of these players that's definitely going to hit these numbers at some point in his career. He's a good kid. I like what this team is doing around him. And no, as of right now, they're definitely a team to really keep on your radar, just as long as Kylian Mbappe is there. And then when I get to the Spanish league. With Spanish league, you have to know Real Madrid, FC Barcelona, and Atletico Madrid. Starting with Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid is always they're always underrated because of course they play in FC Barcelona and Real Madrid shadow, and they'll always have like the Leo Messis, the Ronaldos. But Atletico Madrid is probably the world's biggest giant killer because they're another team. They're a team that people just let slip under the radar. They're sort of like Borussia Dortmund. They'll come in and they'll snap a FC Barcelona if they're really like not playing hard. They still have the best. They probably have the best all-around goalie in soccer with Jan Oblak. They have João Felix, the young Portuguese player who could break out at any minute. He's still incredibly young. They still have the team around them to make waves, and they're still doing well in La Liga, but they're still not playing as well as Barca or Real Madrid. But Atletico did knock out Liverpool in the round of 16 by aggregate. Like they did. Like that did happen. Like Atletico Madrid is not a team to take lightly, and if you're going to follow Barcelona and Real Madrid, you should be aware of Atletico Madrid. And also, just like Dortmund is for Bayern, a lot of their best players tend to go on like better teams after that. Atletico Madrid is one of those teams, whereas a lot of Portuguese, Spanish players on their way to like Real Madrid or Barcelona, they'll go to Atletico Madrid beforehand. Now getting to El Clasico, the two teams involved in El Clasico. I started with FC Barcelona. As long as FC Barcelona has Lionel Messi, they will always be a top-tier contender. It looks as though the winner of it looks as long as they're in Champions League contention, they will always be a threat. As long as Leo Messi can score one or two, or get involved in one or two goals in each game, FC Barcelona will always be a threat, even if they were to play a team as stacked and as competent as Bayern Munich. But in that respect, even with Antoine Griezmann, they even have Marc-Andre Ter Stegen, who is another top all-around goalie. They have the midfielders. They were able to pick up Frankie de Jong from Ajax. they're able to fill in the holes and replace them. But I think once Leo Messi leaves, or I think once he leaves FC Barcelona, they're not going to be as good as they were when he was there. It'll be a second until they're able to fix or able to replace a player such as Lionel Messi. But at the same time, they are FC Barcelona. Like, they still have the money to get any manager, any player that they really wanted to. So FC Barcelona is definitely a team you should be aware of. FC Barcelona is a team just like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, where a lot of the world's best players at their peak, like the best club they'll play for, if they get an opportunity to play for, is FC Barcelona. I'll get into Real Madrid with that in a bit, but I imagine once Leo Messi's gone, either his heir apparent will already be there, or it won't be long until the next person that's going to take over that role is there. Because FC Barcelona always finds their man, just like Real Madrid, and that's why El Clasico's been the way it's been, where you see some of the best players in the world are usually collected on one of a handful of teams, and FC Barcelona is one of those teams. And then the other half of El Clasico is Real Madrid, where, they just lost Cristiano Ronaldo, but they've been trying to replace him. They were able to get Eden Hazard. They got Luka Jovic from the German league. They were able to try to plug in the pieces around him. They were able to try to fit 18-year-old Vinicius Jr. in to really replace him. This is an example of what I think Barcelona is going to go through for a bit with Messi. But with Zinedine Zidane back coaching for Real Madrid, it looks as though they have a really good shot of winning La Liga this year. So yeah, they're definitely a team to be feared. Right now, I wouldn't say they're super contenders, but they're always a team that's in position to land a player such as Paul Pogba or Kylian Mbappe, because Real Madrid always has that money lying around, and they're never hesitant to drop an expensive player just to spend money on a top level player. Like, don't think that they wouldn't, because they're that cutthroat. Their expectations are super high every single season. And because they've won 5 Champions Leagues in the last decade, I mean, I feel like there's a legit reason that they are this way. So FC Barcelona and Real Madrid should be the last 2 teams that you are aware of in the world, because they are the 2 top dogs in all of Europe you should be aware of. And there's also other teams around the world, like Ajax, the team in the Netherlands, that runs that one. There's teams and other organizations where you see a lot of young players that are working their way to the top. They kind of play on these teams just to kind of really get recognized and get picked up. But that's kind of the business of it. I think because of the fact that there is no salary cap, I think soccer can be enjoyed at its fullest, because I really named about 11 to 15 teams. I don't even know how many teams I named, but the fact that you can really get all these players together in the same 15 teams, you can get them together in one Champions League tournament. No, I think that's what makes soccer. I think that's what makes it the world's most watchable sport. And if you ever really get a chance to, you should at least be aware of these teams. And of course, there are other elite teams amongst them, but I couldn't really make a video that long. But these are the teams that, like, if you were to play FIFA, these are the 5-star teams on FIFA. Like, you should know that if any player were to qualify for any of these teams, that they're an elite soccer player. They've definitely made, if any of these teams are the best team that a player's made it in their life, they were definitely a very, very talented soccer player. And with that, I appreciate you for listening to all 30 minutes of this. I think soccer, like I said, I think soccer, football, it's a wonderful experience. It's a wonderful experience for someone just to really just partake and just get themselves into. But with further ado, I'll probably speak a little bit more about soccer in the upcoming weeks or so. But with that, I appreciate you. And with that, I'm just going to say peace.